The gunshot echoed across the canyon just as Eleanor's horse reared, and she felt herself falling through the air with nothing but red desert rock rushing up to meet her. She hit the ground hard, the impact jarring every bone in her body, and then came the sickening crack and the white-hot pain that exploded through her left ankle. Eleanor gasped, trying to draw breath into her stunned lungs, tasting dust and copper. Above her, the September sky was impossibly blue, and somewhere in the distance, her mare was galloping away in blind panic. The pain came in waves now, each one worse than the last. Eleanor tried to sit up, tried to assess the damage, but the moment she moved her leg, the agony made her vision blur. She fell back against the sun-baked earth, pressing her hand to her mouth to stifle a cry. Out here, 15 miles from Bisbee, Arizona, screaming would do nothing but waste what little water she had left in her body. She had been foolish to ride out alone. Her father had warned her a dozen times that the territory between their ranch and the copper mining town was no place for a woman traveling solo. Not in 1883, not with tensions still high between settlers and the Apache, not with bandits and claim jumpers prowling the hills. But Eleanor had always been stubborn, had always believed she could handle herself. At 22, she had been breaking horses and riding these trails since she was old enough to sit a saddle. She had thought herself invincible. Now she was going to die out here, alone, with a broken ankle and no horse. Eleanor forced herself to think clearly through the pain. She managed to prop herself up on her elbows and look down at her left foot. The boot was already swelling, the leather stretching tight. She could see the unnatural angle of her ankle, the way it bent wrong beneath her riding skirt. Definitely broken, possibly in more than one place. The sun was directly overhead, beating down without mercy. She had maybe 3 hours of water in her canteen if she was careful. After that, the desert heat would finish what the fall had started. Her horse was long gone, probably running straight back toward home, which meant her father would know something was wrong. But would he find her in time? Would he even know where to look? Eleanor closed her eyes and tried to slow her breathing, tried to think past the panic clawing at her chest. She had matches in her saddlebag. No, wait, her saddlebag was on her horse. She had nothing but the clothes on her back, the canteen at her hip, and the small knife she kept strapped to her thigh beneath her skirts. Not enough to survive. Not nearly enough. The sun moved slowly across the sky. Eleanor drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain and the heat conspiring to pull her under. She tried to stay awake, tried to keep watch, but her body had other ideas. When she opened her eyes again, the shadows had lengthened, and the air had begun to cool by degrees so small they barely mattered. That was when she heard the hoofbeats. Eleanor's heart leaped. She tried to call out, but her throat was too dry, her voice emerging as barely more than a croak. She licked her cracked lips and tried again. "Help, please help," the hoofbeats slowed, then stopped. For a long moment there was only silence, and Eleanor felt despair wash over her. They had not heard her. They were moving on. Then came the sound of boots on rock, someone walking, coming closer. Eleanor tried to push herself up, tried to see who was approaching, but the pain in her ankle flared so violently that black spots danced across her vision. Easy now. The voice was male, deep and steady, with a slight drawl that marked him as someone who had spent time in Texas. "Do not try to move." Eleanor blinked away the spots and found herself looking up at a man she had never seen before. He was tall, probably well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean, weathered look of someone who spent their life outdoors. His face was shaded by a wide-brimmed hat, but she could see dark eyes studying her with concern, a strong jaw shadowed with several days of stubble. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, Worn denim, a faded shirt, scuffed boots, and a gun belt slung low on his hips. "My ankle," Eleanor managed to say. "I fell. My horse ran off." The cowboy crouched down beside her, moving with an easy grace despite his size. "I saw her about 2 miles back, heading south like the devil himself was chasing her. That is how I knew someone was in trouble out here." He removed his hat, revealing dark hair that fell past his collar, and used it to shade her face from the setting sun. "Name is Ethan Morrison. I am heading into Bisbee from a ranch up north." "Eleanor Ashford," she whispered. "My father owns the AAA southeast of town." "I know it." Ethan's gaze moved to her ankle, and his expression grew serious. "That looks bad. Can I take a look?" Eleanor nodded, biting down hard on her lower lip as Ethan gently lifted the hem of her riding skirt to examine her boot. His hands were careful, surprisingly gentle for someone so large, but even his light touch made her gasp with pain. "I am sorry," he said quietly, "but I need to get this boot off before the swelling gets worse. It is going to hurt like hell." "It already hurts like hell," Eleanor said through gritted teeth. The corner of Ethan's mouth quirked up just slightly. "Fair point." He pulled a knife from his belt, and Eleanor noticed it was well maintained, the blade catching the light. "I am going to cut the leather. Try not to move." The next few minutes were agony. Even with Ethan being as careful as humanly possible, the process of removing her boot sent waves of nausea through Eleanor's stomach. She dug her fingers into the dirt and focused on breathing, on not passing out, on anything but the grinding pain in her ankle. When the boot finally came free, Ethan let out a low whistle. "Broken for sure. Probably the fibula, maybe the tibia too. We need to splint this before I can move you anywhere." "How do you know about broken bones?" Eleanor asked, her voice shaky. "Spent time as a trail hand on the big cattle drives," Ethan said, already moving to his horse, a sturdy bay gelding standing patient nearby. "You learn field medicine pretty quick when you are 3 weeks from the nearest doctor and someone gets kicked by a steer." He returned with what looked like a spare shirt and began tearing it into strips. "I am not going to lie to you, Miss Ashford. This is going to hurt worse than removing the boot." Eleanor closed her eyes. "Just do it." Ethan worked quickly and efficiently. He found 2 straight pieces of wood from a dead mesquite bush and positioned them on either side of her ankle. The moment he began to bind them in place, Eleanor could not stop the cry that escaped her lips. White light exploded behind her eyelids, and for a moment she thought she might actually faint. But Ethan kept talking to her, his voice low and steady, telling her she was doing fine, that she was brave, that it was almost over. When he tied off the final strip of cloth, Eleanor was shaking and covered in cold sweat despite the heat. Ethan offered her his canteen, and she drank gratefully, the water tasting like the finest wine. "That will hold until we get you to town," Ethan said, sitting back on his heels. "But we have a problem. It is a good 15 miles to Bisbee, and we are losing daylight fast. I can make a travois and have my horse pull you, but that is going to be slow going in the dark and rough on your ankle." Eleanor shook her head weakly. "I cannot ask you to do that. You have your own business to attend to. My business can wait." Ethan's tone left no room for argument. "I am not leaving an injured woman alone in the desert overnight, but there is another option. I can carry you. It will be faster, and I can keep your ankle more stable. The question is whether you trust me enough to let me." Eleanor studied his face. She had been raised to be wary of strangers, especially out here where lawlessness was common as dirt. But there was something in Ethan's eyes, a straightforward honesty that made her think he was exactly what he appeared to be, a decent man who had stumbled across someone in need. "I trust you," she said. Ethan nodded. "All right then. I am going to pick you up now." Put your arms around my neck and try to keep that leg as still as possible." He moved with surprising gentleness for such a large man, sliding one arm under her knees and the other behind her back. When he lifted her, Eleanor bit back another gasp of pain, but once he had her settled against his chest, the position was actually more comfortable than lying on the ground had been. He smelled of leather and horse and clean sweat, and despite the situation, Eleanor found something reassuring about his solid presence. Ethan carried her to his horse and somehow managed to mount while still holding her, settling her sideways across his lap. "This is going to be a long ride," he said. "If you need to rest, just say so." "How can you possibly carry me for 15 miles?" Eleanor asked. The pain was already making her lightheaded again, and she could not imagine enduring this for hours. "Did I mention I worked cattle drives?" Ethan gathered the reins and urged his horse into a smooth walk. "I once carried a cowhand with a broken leg 12 miles to a rail station. You are considerably lighter, and I am more stubborn than most mules. We will make it." As they began to move, Eleanor found herself relaxing slightly against Ethan's chest. The rhythm of the horse's gait was soothing, and Ethan's arms around her felt secure, protective. She had never been the type of woman who needed protecting, but right now, hurt and vulnerable in the middle of nowhere, she was grateful beyond words that this stranger had found her. "Tell me about your ranch," Ethan said after a few minutes of silence. "It will help pass the time." So Eleanor talked, her voice weak but growing steadier as she went. She told him about the AAA, about her father who had come to Arizona Territory after the war to start fresh. She told him about learning to ride before she could properly walk, about the horses she had trained, about the land she loved with its impossible beauty and its harsh realities. And as she talked, Ethan listened with the kind of attention that made her feel like her words mattered. In turn, he told her about himself. He had grown up in Texas, the youngest son of a family with too many mouths to feed and not enough land to go around. He had left at 16 to make his own way, working on ranches from the Gulf Coast to the New Mexico Territory. He was 25 now, had saved enough money to think about buying his own place, and had been heading to Bisbee to look at some property near the copper mines. "The mines are changing everything around here," Eleanor said. The pain was a constant presence now, but talking helped distract from it. "Bisbee has grown so much in just the last year, people flooding in from everywhere looking to strike it rich." "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Ethan asked. Eleanor considered. "Both, I suppose. More people means more business, more opportunity, but it also means more trouble. The town cannot grow fast enough to keep up. We have 3 saloons and not enough decent housing. More fights, more crime." She paused. "My father worries about it, says the old ways are disappearing." "Maybe they are," Ethan said quietly, "but change is not always bad. Sometimes new things bring new possibilities." The sun sank lower, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold and deep purple. The temperature began to drop, and Eleanor shivered despite herself. Ethan immediately shifted his hold on her, pulling her closer against his warmth. "Not much farther now," he said, though Eleanor suspected it was still many miles. "You are doing remarkably well, Miss Ashford." "Eleanor," she said. "If you are going to carry me across the desert, you might as well call me Eleanor." She felt rather than saw his smile. "Eleanor, then." "And you can call me Ethan." They fell into a comfortable silence, and Eleanor let herself drift. The pain was exhausting, pulling at her consciousness, but every time she started to slip too far under, Ethan would speak to her, asking her a question or telling her a story, keeping her anchored to the present. Hours passed. The stars came out in their thousands, brilliant in the clear desert air. Eleanor had seen them her whole life, but somehow, seeing them from Ethan's arms, they seemed different. More beautiful, maybe, or just more significant somehow. "You ever think about leaving?" Ethan asked at one point, his voice soft in the darkness. "Going back east, maybe, where life is easier." "Never," Eleanor said without hesitation. "This is my home. It is hard, yes, but it is honest. It does not lie to you about what it is. I have never wanted anything else." "I understand that," Ethan said. "That is why I keep moving west instead of going back. Out here, a man can be judged by what he does, not who his father was or how much money his family has. It is the last place where that is still true." Eleanor could hear the conviction in his voice, and she found herself liking this man more and more. There was something solid about him, something real. In her 22 years, she had met plenty of cowboys and drifters, but most of them were running from something or chasing empty dreams. Ethan seemed different. He seemed like someone who knew exactly who he was. "Tell me about the property you are looking at," she said. "In Bisbee." Ethan's arms tightened slightly around her, and she could hear the excitement in his voice even as he tried to keep it measured. 50 acres about 3 miles outside town, up in the Mule Mountains. There is a creek that runs year-round, good grass, enough timber for building. The owner is selling because he got injured in the mines and wants to move back to Kansas. It is more land than I ever thought I could afford, but the copper boom has made properties available that would not have been before. "It sounds wonderful," Eleanor said honestly. "It could be with work. There is an old cabin on it, nothing fancy, but it is a start. Room enough to run cattle, maybe even start breeding horses." He paused. "I have been working for other people's dreams my whole life. It is time I started building my own." Eleanor felt a pang of something she could not quite name. Here was a man with nothing but determination and a vision for his future, willing to work himself to the bone to make it real. She admired that. More than admired it, actually, but she was too tired and hurt to examine those feelings too closely right now. The lights of Bisbee finally appeared in the distance, a scattered constellation of lanterns and electric lights marking the edge of civilization. Eleanor had never been so grateful to see her hometown, even with all its noise and chaos. Ethan guided his horse down the main street, past the saloons already rowdy with miners and gamblers, past the assay offices and supply stores, toward the small building that served as Doc Brennan's office. The doctor lived above his practice, and light showed in the upstairs windows despite the late hour. Ethan dismounted carefully, keeping Eleanor secure in his arms, and carried her up the steps. He had to knock 3 times before the door finally opened, revealing a portly man in his 50s with gray hair and spectacles. "Doc Brennan," Ethan said. "I found Miss Ashford out past Red Rock Canyon. She took a fall from her horse. Broken ankle, possibly worse. She needs help." The doctor's eyes widened. "Eleanor Ashford. Good Lord, your father has been tearing the town apart looking for you. Bring her inside, quickly." The next hour passed in a blur of pain and medical procedures. Doc Brennan examined Eleanor's ankle, confirmed Ethan's diagnosis of a broken fibula, and praised the quality of the splint that had kept the bone from shifting during the long ride. He gave Eleanor laudanum for the pain, set the bone properly, and wrapped her ankle in a proper cast. Through it all, Ethan stayed. He stood in the corner of the examination room, his hat in his hands, ready to help if needed. Eleanor found herself looking for him whenever the pain got too bad, and just seeing him there, solid and steady, helped her get through it. When Doc Brennan finally finished, he patted Eleanor's hand. "You are going to be fine, my dear. 6 to 8 weeks in that cast, no weight on that foot whatsoever, and you should heal up good as new. You were very lucky." Another few hours in the desert and we would be having a very different conversation. "I know," Eleanor said, her voice thick from the laudanum. "I owe Ethan my life." "Nonsense," Ethan said immediately. "Any decent person would have done the same." "But you are the one who did it," Eleanor said. She reached out her hand, and after a moment, Ethan crossed the room and took it. His hand was warm and calloused and strong. "Thank you does not seem like enough, but thank you." Ethan's dark eyes met hers, and something passed between them, some wordless understanding that made Eleanor's heart beat faster. "You are welcome, Eleanor." The door burst open, and Eleanor's father rushed in, his face haggard with worry. Thomas Ashford was a big man, made bigger by panic, and he crossed the room in 2 strides to gather his daughter into his arms. "Eleanor, thank God. When your mare came back without you, I thought," his voice broke. "I thought the worst." "I am all right, Father, I am all right." Eleanor hugged him back as tightly as she could. "This is Ethan Morrison. He found me and brought me here. He saved my life." Thomas Ashford turned to Ethan, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I do not know how to thank you, son. Name it. Anything you want, it is yours." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I do not want anything, sir. I was just helping someone in need." "That is not how this works," Thomas said firmly. "You brought my daughter back to me. You kept her safe. I am in your debt." He looked at Ethan more closely. "Morrison, you said." "Any relation to the Morrisons out of Dallas?" "No, sir. Different family. I am from a small town east of there." Thomas nodded slowly. "Well, Ethan Morrison, whatever your plans were in Bisbee, I hope they include letting me buy you the finest dinner this town has to offer. And if you are looking for work, I could use a good man at the AAA. We always need hands who know their business." "Actually," Eleanor said before Ethan could respond, the laudanum making her bold, "he is looking to buy property. The 50 acres up in the Mule Mountains." Thomas's eyebrows rose. "The old Peterson place. That is good land, real good land." He studied Ethan with new interest. "You have ranching experience." 10 years' worth, sir. Cattle, horses, general ranch work. I have saved enough for the down payment, and I plan to work the rest." "Then you should come by the ranch once Eleanor is settled," Thomas said. "We can talk about how neighbors help neighbors in these parts, and I mean it about that dinner. Tomorrow night, the hotel dining room, I insist." Ethan looked like he wanted to refuse, but something in Thomas's expression made it clear that refusing would be an insult. "I would be honored, sir." "Good, good." Thomas turned back to Eleanor. "Doc says you need to stay off that foot completely for a while. We will get you home and set up in the downstairs guest room so you do not have to manage stairs." "I can manage stairs," Eleanor protested, but another wave of exhaustion and laudanum hit her, and she sagged back against the pillows. "That settles it," Doc Brennan said. "She should stay here tonight anyway, so I can monitor her. The shock and pain sometimes cause delayed reactions. You can take her home in the morning, Thomas, once we are sure she is stable." Thomas did not look happy about leaving his daughter, but he nodded. "I will be back first thing." He shook Ethan's hand again, his grip firm. "Tomorrow night, Morrison, 6 o'clock. Do not make me hunt you down." Despite everything, Eleanor found herself smiling. Her father had clearly taken a liking to Ethan, which was unusual. Thomas Ashford was notoriously difficult to impress. After her father left, Doc Brennan shooed Ethan toward the door as well. "The girl needs rest, son. You have done your good deed for the day." Ethan nodded but paused at the door to look back at Eleanor. "I am glad you are all right," he said simply. "I will see you tomorrow." Eleanor asked, trying not to sound too hopeful. "You will see me tomorrow," Ethan confirmed, and then he was gone. Eleanor lay in the darkness of the doctor's office, her ankle throbbing despite the medication, and thought about Ethan Morrison. She thought about his strong arms carrying her through the desert, about his steady voice keeping her anchored when the pain threatened to pull her under, about his dark eyes and the way they had looked at her when she thanked him. She was being foolish, she told herself. She had known the man for all of a few hours, most of them spent in a haze of pain and shock. She knew nothing about him except that he was kind and capable and planning to stay in the area, but her heart did not seem to care about logic. Her heart was already convinced that Ethan Morrison was someone special. The next morning, Eleanor woke to find Doc Brennan checking her ankle and her father hovering anxiously nearby. The laudanum had worn off, and the pain was back with a vengeance, but it was manageable. She felt clear-headed for the first time since the fall. "Everything looks good," the doctor announced. "The swelling is down, no signs of infection, bone is set properly. You can go home, but I mean it about staying off that foot, Eleanor. No weight whatsoever. You will need crutches, and even then, you should be sitting or lying down as much as possible." "For how long?" Eleanor asked, already dreading the answer. 2 weeks minimum before you can start putting the tiniest bit of weight on it. 6 to 8 weeks total before you are healed enough to walk normally. Longer if you do not follow my instructions. Eleanor groaned. 2 weeks confined to a chair or bed would drive her mad. She was used to being active, to riding and working and moving constantly. The thought of being stuck in one place was almost worse than the pain. Her father seemed to read her thoughts. "We will manage," he said firmly. "Maria can help you with whatever you need, and I will set you up in the front room where you can at least see out the windows." "It could be much worse, Eleanor, if that young man had not found you." "I know, Father." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "I know." The trip back to the ranch was uncomfortable despite her father's careful driving. Every bump in the road sent jolts of pain through Eleanor's ankle, and by the time they arrived at the AAA, she was exhausted and nauseated. Maria, their housekeeper, was waiting at the door, her weathered face creased with worry. "Dios mío, niña, you scared us all half to death," she said, helping Thomas get Eleanor inside and settled on the sofa in the front room. "I will make you some soup, something to keep your strength up." True to his word, Thomas had set up the front room like a bedroom. There was a daybed along one wall, piled with quilts and pillows, and he had moved a small table within easy reach. Eleanor could see out the large front windows to the yard and the mountains beyond. It was not freedom, but it was better than being stuck in a bedroom upstairs. The day passed slowly. Eleanor dozed on and off, her body demanding rest to heal. Maria brought her soup and fresh bread, and her father stopped in every hour to check on her. By late afternoon, Eleanor was bored and restless despite her exhaustion. That was when she heard the sound of a horse approaching. Through the window, she could see Ethan riding up to the house, sitting tall and easy in the saddle. Her heart gave a little jump that had nothing to do with pain. Thomas met Ethan at the door, and Eleanor could hear their voices in the hallway. A moment later, both men entered the front room. "Ethan came by to see how you were doing," her father said, smiling, "and to remind me about dinner tonight, though I had not forgotten." "I also wanted to return this," Ethan said, holding out Eleanor's torn boot. "I thought you might want to have it repaired if possible." "Good leather is expensive." Eleanor took the boot, touched by the gesture. "Thank you. That was thoughtful." Ethan stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, his hat in his hands again, and Eleanor realized he was nervous. It was endearing, this big, capable man suddenly unsure of himself in a social situation. "Please sit down," she said, gesturing to the chair near the sofa. "Unless you have to rush off, I have some time," Ethan said, lowering himself into the chair. He looked at her ankle, properly cast now and propped on pillows. "How are you feeling?" "Better than yesterday," Eleanor said honestly. "Sore and frustrated, but better. Doc says 6 to 8 weeks before I am healed." Ethan winced sympathetically. "That is a long time to be laid up." You have no idea how long, Eleanor said with feeling. I am going to go mad with boredom. Then I will have to make sure you have plenty of visitors to keep you entertained, Ethan said with a small smile. If that is all right with you, of course. Eleanor felt warmth spread through her chest. I would like that very much. Thomas watched this exchange with interest, and Eleanor could see the wheels turning in her father's head. She shot him a warning look, but he just smiled innocently. Well, I will leave you young people to talk, Thomas said. I have some business to attend to in the barn. Ethan, I will see you at 6 tonight. After her father left, an oddly comfortable silence settled over the room. Ethan looked around with interest, taking in the details. The books on the shelves, the family photographs on the mantel, the Navajo rugs on the floor. Your father has built something good here, he said finally. He has worked hard for it, Eleanor said. We both have. After my mother died when I was 12, it was just the two of us. We learned to lean on each other. I am sorry about your mother, Ethan said quietly. Thank you. It was a long time ago, but I still miss her. Eleanor adjusted her position on the sofa, trying to get comfortable. What about your family? Do you still have people back in Texas? My parents are still there and 3 older brothers. We write occasionally, but I have not been back in years. We are not close exactly, but there is no bad blood. We are just different people wanting different things. And what do you want? Eleanor asked, genuinely curious. Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Land of my own, a place to build something that lasts, maybe a family someday if I am lucky enough to find the right woman. He met her eyes. What do you want, Eleanor? No one had ever asked her that before, not directly. People assumed they knew what she wanted, what any woman wanted, but Ethan was actually asking, actually interested in her answer. I want to stay here, she said. I want to keep training horses, keep working this land. I want to prove that a woman can run a ranch as well as any man. I want. She paused, surprised by her own honesty. I want someone who understands that about me, who does not see my independence as something to overcome. Ethan nodded slowly. That seems reasonable enough to me. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Eleanor found herself laughing more than she had in months, found herself sharing things she had never told anyone. Ethan was surprisingly easy to talk to, and he seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. He did not interrupt or dismiss her opinions, even when they disagreed about something. When he finally stood to leave, Eleanor felt a genuine pang of disappointment. I should let you rest, Ethan said. You look tired. I am tired, Eleanor admitted, but I am glad you came by. I will visit again if that is all right, Ethan said. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow would be good, Eleanor said, trying not to sound too eager. Ethan put his hat back on and headed for the door, but he paused and looked back. I meant what I said, Eleanor. You are remarkably brave. Not many people could have stayed as calm as you did out there in the desert. I was not calm, Eleanor said. I was terrified. But you did not fall apart. You did what needed doing. That takes courage. He tipped his hat to her. Until tomorrow, then. After he left, Eleanor lay back on the sofa and closed her eyes, a smile playing at her lips. Maria came in a few minutes later and raised an eyebrow. That is a very happy look for someone with a broken ankle, the housekeeper observed. I am just feeling better, Eleanor said innocently. And this feeling better has nothing to do with the very handsome cowboy who just left. Eleanor felt her cheeks heat. Maria. Do not Maria me, Nina. I have eyes. And your father has already decided that young man is exactly what you need. My father is getting ahead of himself, Eleanor said, but she could not quite keep the hope out of her voice. That evening, while her father went into town for dinner with Ethan, Eleanor found herself thinking about the cowboy who had saved her life. She wondered what he and her father were talking about, wondered if Ethan was thinking about her the way she could not seem to stop thinking about him. When Thomas returned late that night, he was in excellent spirits. "That Morrison is a good man," he announced, settling into the chair beside Eleanor's sofa. "Smart, hard-working, honest. He told me all about his plans for the Peterson place. He has thought it through carefully, has realistic expectations. I told him I would help however I could as a thank you for bringing you home." "What did he say to that?" Eleanor asked. "He was grateful but insisted he did not want charity. I respect that. But I also made it clear that out here, neighbors helping neighbors is not charity, it is survival. He finally agreed to let me lend him some tools and maybe some hands when it comes time to start building." Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying his daughter. "He asked about you, several times. Wanted to know if you were all right, if you needed anything, what the doctor had said about your recovery. He was just being polite, Father. Eleanor, I have lived 53 years, and I know the difference between polite interest and genuine concern. That young man cares about you." Thomas held up a hand before she could protest. "I am not saying he is in love with you after one day, but I am saying there is something there, and it would be foolish to ignore it." Eleanor bit her lip. "I hardly know him." "Then get to know him. You have nothing but time for the next few weeks, and he has already said he plans to visit regularly." Thomas reached over and patted her hand. "I am not telling you what to do, daughter. I am just saying keep an open mind. Good men are hard to find, and ones who would carry an injured woman 15 miles through the desert are even rarer." Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan became a regular visitor at the AAA. He came by almost every afternoon, staying for an hour or two, talking with Eleanor about everything and nothing. He told her stories from his years on the trail, and she told him about growing up on the ranch. They discussed books they had read, places they wanted to see, dreams they had for the future. Ethan also made himself useful around the ranch, much to Thomas's delight. He helped repair a section of fence that had been damaged in a recent storm, assisted with breaking a particularly stubborn young horse, and offered his opinion on some cattle Thomas was considering purchasing. He never asked for payment, never seemed to expect anything in return. He was just there, steady and reliable, fitting into the rhythm of the ranch as if he had always been part of it. Eleanor found herself watching for him every day, found her mood lifting the moment she heard his horse approaching. They had fallen into an easy friendship that felt deeper than the short time they had known each other should allow. Sometimes, Eleanor would look up from a conversation to find Ethan watching her with an expression she could not quite read, something warm and intent that made her heart race. One afternoon, nearly 3 weeks after the accident, Ethan arrived with a surprise. He had brought his guitar, an old instrument that had clearly seen better days but was lovingly maintained. "I thought you might like some music," he said, looking almost shy. "You mentioned the other day that you missed having something to do in the evenings. You play?" Eleanor asked, delighted. "A little. I learned on the trail, long nights with nothing to do but play cards or make music." He settled into his usual chair and positioned the guitar on his knee. "Any requests? Play whatever you like." Ethan's fingers moved over the strings, and suddenly the room was filled with music. He played old folk songs and trail ballads, his voice surprisingly good, warm and rich. Eleanor closed her eyes and let the music wash over her, feeling something tight in her chest finally begin to loosen. When he finished the third song, she opened her eyes to find him watching her. "That was beautiful," she said softly. "Thank you. You looked peaceful," Ethan said. "I like seeing you peaceful. You have been so restless lately." "I hate being stuck like this," Eleanor admitted. "I keep thinking about all the things I should be doing, all the work I am missing. My father has had to hire an extra hand just to cover what I usually do." "You will be back to it soon enough," Ethan said. "Doc said another week before you can start putting weight on that foot, right? If everything is healing properly, yes. But even then, it will be weeks more before I am back to normal." Eleanor sighed. "I am sorry. I know I am being difficult." "You are not being difficult. You are being human." Ethan set the guitar aside and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Eleanor, can I tell you something? Of course. These past few weeks visiting you, getting to know you, it has been the best part of my days. I know we have not known each other long, and I know I should probably keep my mouth shut, but I have never been good at that." He took a breath. "I think you are the most remarkable woman I have ever met." Eleanor's heart was suddenly pounding so hard she thought he must be able to hear it. "Ethan, you do not have to say anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know. You have been stuck here healing, frustrated and bored, and you probably think the only reason I keep coming around is out of some sense of obligation. But that is not it at all. I come here because I want to see you, because talking to you is the highlight of my day. Because when I think about my future, about that land I am buying and the life I want to build, I find myself wondering if maybe you could be part of it." Eleanor could not breathe. She had hoped, had dreamed, but she had been afraid to let herself believe that Ethan might feel the same way she did. "I think about that too," she whispered. "About you being part of my future." The smile that spread across Ethan's face was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Yeah, yeah." Eleanor laughed, feeling giddy and terrified and exhilarated all at once. "I know it is fast, and I know people will think we are crazy, but I do not care. These weeks getting to know you, Ethan, they have been the happiest I can remember." Ethan stood and moved to the sofa, sitting carefully on the edge so he would not jostle her injured ankle. He took her hand in both of his touch warm and solid and right. "I am not proposing marriage," he said, his voice low and serious. "Not yet. You should know me better first, see me at my worst, figure out if you can stand living with all my bad habits. But I am saying I want to court you properly, Eleanor Ashford. I want to see where this goes with your father's blessing and the whole town watching if they want to. I want to give this a real chance." "So do I," Eleanor said, squeezing his hand. "So do I." Ethan lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, and Eleanor felt the gesture all the way down to her toes. When he looked at her, his dark eyes were full of promise and possibility. "Your father is going to have opinions about this," he said with a slight grin. "My father already has opinions about this," Eleanor corrected. "He has been dropping hints for the past 2 weeks. Has he now?" Ethan looked pleased. "Well, I will still ask his permission formally. I want to do this right." "You are doing everything right," Eleanor said softly. They sat together in the fading afternoon light, hands clasped, talking quietly about their hopes and plans. Ethan told her about the progress on purchasing the Peterson land, about his ideas for the ranch he wanted to build. Eleanor told him about the horses she wanted to breed, about techniques she had been studying for training. They talked about how their 2 properties might work together, how neighbors could support each other while maintaining their independence. It was the most romantic conversation Eleanor had ever had, practical and passionate all at once, full of mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's dreams. When Thomas came in for supper and found them sitting close together, hands still clasped, he just smiled. "About time," was all he said. That night, after Ethan had left and Eleanor was settled in bed, her father came to say good night. "He asked my permission to court you," Thomas said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Very proper about it. Told me his intentions, his prospects, his plans. Asked if I would object." "And what did you say?" Eleanor asked, though she thought she knew. I told him I would be proud to have him court my daughter, with the understanding that if he ever hurts you, I will hunt him down and make him wish he had never been born." Thomas's expression was serious. "I like him, Eleanor. I like him a lot. But you are still my daughter, and your happiness is the most important thing in the world to me. If you have any doubts, any concerns, you tell me and we will deal with them." "I do not have doubts," Eleanor said. "I know it is fast, Father, but it feels right. He feels right." Thomas nodded slowly. "Your mother used to say that when you meet the right person, you just know. She said she knew about me 3 days after we met, and I knew about her after one conversation. Took me another month to work up the courage to court her properly, but I knew." He leaned down and kissed Eleanor's forehead. "Trust your instincts, daughter. They have never steered you wrong before." The next week, Doc Brennan examined Eleanor's ankle and declared himself satisfied with her progress. "You can start putting a little weight on it," he said. "Very little and with crutches. No walking unassisted for at least another month." The freedom to move, even limited movement, was glorious. Eleanor practiced with the crutches, learning to navigate the house, to move from room to room under her own power. It was exhausting at first, but she was determined to regain her independence as quickly as possible. Ethan continued his visits, but now they could sit together on the front porch, could take short walks around the yard with Eleanor on her crutches, and Ethan hovering protectively nearby. The physical closeness, the ability to be outside together, added a new dimension to their growing relationship. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson, Ethan reached over and took Eleanor's hand. "I signed the papers today," he said quietly. "The Peterson place is officially mine." "Oh, Ethan, that is wonderful." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "Congratulations." "Thank you. It still does not feel quite real." He was quiet for a moment. "I was wondering if you might like to see it. The property, I mean. If you are up for a wagon ride, I could take you out there, show you what I am planning." "I would love that," Eleanor said immediately. "When?" "Saturday. That gives you a few more days to practice with the crutches. Make sure you are steady enough." Saturday arrived bright and clear, perfect weather for an outing. Ethan showed up early in a borrowed wagon, and with Thomas's help, they got Eleanor settled comfortably on the seat with her crutches and a blanket to cushion the ride. Thomas stood in the yard waving as they pulled away, looking ridiculously pleased with himself. The ride to Ethan's property took about an hour, and Eleanor spent the whole time looking around with interest. She had been to this area before, but never with an eye toward actually living here. The land was beautiful. Rolling hills covered with tough desert grass, scattered juniper and piñon pines, outcroppings of red rock that glowed in the sunlight. When they crested the final hill, and Eleanor got her first look at Ethan's land, she gasped. It was perfect. The creek he had mentioned ran through a small valley, lined with cottonwoods that provided shade and greenery. There was the old cabin, small but solid-looking, situated on a rise with a view of the mountains. The land stretched out in every direction, wild and beautiful and full of potential. "What do you think?" Ethan asked, and Eleanor could hear the nervousness in his voice. "I think it is incredible," she said honestly. "I can see why you wanted it." Ethan helped her down from the wagon and handed her the crutches. They made their way slowly to the cabin, Ethan pointing out features of the land as they went. He showed her where he planned to build a barn, where the best grazing was, where he wanted to put in fencing. His enthusiasm was infectious, and Eleanor found herself getting just as excited about his plans as he was. The cabin was small inside, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it was well built and weather-tight. Ethan had already started cleaning it out, and Eleanor could see signs of his work. Fresh firewood stacked neatly by the hearth, new glass in one of the windows, repairs to the door frame. "It is not much yet," Ethan said, looking around critically, "but I can make it better. Add on more rooms, build proper furniture, make it a real home." Eleanor moved to the window and looked out at the land, at the creek and the mountains and the endless sky. She could picture it. The barn Ethan wanted to build, horses in a corral, cattle grazing in the distance. She could picture herself here too, and that realization took her breath away. "You could make this into something really special," she said softly. Ethan came to stand behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I want to try. I have never wanted anything as much as I want to make this work." Eleanor turned to face him, balancing carefully on her crutches. "You will make it work. I believe in you." The look Ethan gave her was so full of emotion that Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. "Having you believe in me means everything," he said quietly. "Eleanor, I know we have only known each other for a month. I know by all rights I should wait longer, be more cautious. But I have never been one to play things safe, and life is too short to waste time." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I am in love with you. I think I started falling the moment I found you in that desert, so brave and determined even with your ankle broken. And every day since then has just made me more certain. You are smart and strong and beautiful, and you see the world the same way I do. You want the same things. You understand this life and what it takes to live it." Eleanor's heart was soaring. "I love you too," she said, the words coming easily because they were so completely true. "I think I have loved you since you carried me 15 miles without complaint, since you sat with me and played guitar, since you looked at me like I was someone worth listening to." Ethan's smile was brilliant. "Then I have to ask you something, and I know it is fast, but I do not care." He took both her hands now, careful not to upset her balance. "Eleanor Ashford, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a cowboy with nothing but a dream and 50 acres and a love that will last until the day I die?" "Yes," Eleanor said without hesitation. "Yes, Ethan Morrison, I will marry you." Ethan let out a whoop of joy that echoed across the valley, and then he was pulling her carefully into his arms, mindful of her crutches and her ankle. He kissed her for the first time, soft and gentle and full of promise, and Eleanor felt like her heart might actually burst from happiness. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I do not have a ring yet," he said. "I wanted to ask you first, make sure you would say yes before I spent the money." "I do not need a ring," Eleanor said. "I just need you." "You will get a ring anyway," Ethan said firmly. "Nothing fancy, but something that shows the world you are spoken for." He pulled back slightly to look at her. "How soon can we get married?" "Is that too forward to ask?" Eleanor laughed. "Nothing about this has been exactly traditional, so I do not think worrying about being forward matters now. I need at least another month for my ankle to heal properly. After that, whenever you want." 2 months then," Ethan said decisively. "That gives me time to make this cabin more livable, to start building the barn, to get the ranch properly started, and it gives you time to heal and plan whatever kind of wedding you want." "I do not need anything elaborate," Eleanor said. "Just our families, maybe a few friends and a preacher." "Your father is going to have opinions," Ethan said with a grin. "My father is going to be thrilled," Eleanor corrected. "Trust me." They spent another hour at the property, making plans and dreaming out loud. Ethan showed Eleanor every corner of his land, pointing out where he wanted to plant a garden, where the best view of the sunrise was, where he thought they should build a proper house eventually. Eleanor offered suggestions, her practical knowledge of ranching combining with his ambition to create something better than either of them could manage alone. When they finally headed back to the AAA, Eleanor was exhausted but happier than she had ever been in her life. They had not even told her father yet, but she could already imagine his reaction. He would pretend to be surprised, would make a show of grilling Ethan about his ability to provide for a wife, but ultimately he would be overjoyed. Thomas had made no secret of the fact that he liked Ethan and thought he would be perfect for his daughter. As predicted, Thomas's reaction to the news of their engagement was pure delight. He shook Ethan's hand so enthusiastically that Eleanor thought he might pull the younger man's arm off, then pulled both of them into a bear hug. "I could not be happier," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You will be good for each other, I know it. And Ethan, you are already like a son to me. Making it official just means I can tell you what to do and expect you to listen." "I make no promises about that last part, sir," Ethan said with a grin. Thomas laughed. "Smart man. You will need that sense of humor living with my daughter." Eleanor swatted her father's arm. "I am not that difficult. You are wonderful," Thomas said, kissing her forehead, "and you are going to be a wonderful wife. Your mother would be so proud." His eyes grew misty. "I wish she could be here to see this." "Me too, father," Eleanor said softly. That night, lying in bed, Eleanor could not stop smiling. Her ankle throbbed, reminding her of the accident that had brought Ethan into her life. If her horse had not been spooked, if she had not fallen, if Ethan had taken a different route or been even an hour later, they might never have met. It was almost enough to make her believe in fate. The next 2 months passed in a blur of activity. Eleanor's ankle healed steadily, and by 6 weeks post-accident, she was walking without crutches, though she still tired easily and had to be careful. Ethan spent his days working on his property, building the barn he had dreamed of, repairing and expanding the cabin, starting to fence pastures. In the evenings, he came to the AAA, and he and Eleanor would sit together planning their future. Thomas threw himself into helping with the wedding preparations, which mostly meant trying to plan a larger celebration than Eleanor wanted. She eventually had to put her foot down and insist that they were keeping things simple. "It is not that I do not appreciate your enthusiasm, father," she said. "But Ethan and I want something small and meaningful, just family and close friends, like I said before." "Fine, fine," Thomas grumbled. "But I am at least having Maria make a proper wedding cake, and we are having a dinner afterward. I will not have people saying I married my daughter off without any kind of celebration." Eleanor had to laugh. Her father's pride would not allow for anything less than a respectable wedding, even if she would have been happy getting married in the barn. They set the date for mid-November, exactly 2 months after Ethan had proposed. The weather had cooled by then, the worst of the summer heat passed, the air crisp and clear. It was Eleanor's favorite time of year in Arizona territory, when the land seemed to take a breath after the brutal months of July and August. The night before the wedding, Eleanor could not sleep. She stood at her window looking out at the moonlit landscape, thinking about how much her life was about to change. Tomorrow she would become Eleanor Morrison, would move to Ethan's ranch, would start building a life with the man she loved. It was exciting and terrifying in equal measure. There was a soft knock at her door, and Thomas came in, carrying a small wooden box. "I thought you might be awake," he said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I was too restless to sleep myself." "Is this where you give me fatherly advice about marriage?" Eleanor asked, sitting next to him. "God, no, you do not need advice from me. You have a good head on your shoulders, and Ethan is a good man. You will figure things out together." He handed her the box. "This is for you. It was your mother's." Eleanor opened the box with trembling hands and gasped. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant in the shape of a wild rose. She remembered her mother wearing it when she was a child. "She wore this on our wedding day," Thomas said quietly. "And she always said she would give it to you when you got married." Since she cannot be here to do it herself, I am doing it for her." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Father, I cannot." "You can and you will. Your mother would want you to have it. She would want to be part of your wedding day, even if she cannot be here in person." Thomas took the necklace from the box and fastened it around Eleanor's neck. "There, perfect. You look so much like her, Eleanor, especially now, all grown up and in love. She would be so proud of the woman you have become." Eleanor hugged her father tightly. "Thank you for everything. For raising me, for supporting me, for letting me be myself even when it was not easy." "That is what parents do," Thomas said gruffly. "And that is what you will do for your own children someday. Now get some sleep. You have a big day tomorrow." The morning of the wedding was chaotic but joyful. Maria helped Eleanor into her dress, a simple but beautiful gown in cream-colored silk that they had ordered from San Francisco. It was elegant without being ostentatious, perfect for a ranch wedding. Her hair was pinned up in soft curls, with her mother's necklace gleaming at her throat. The ceremony was held at the small church in Bisbee, with about 30 people in attendance. Eleanor walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her ankle strong enough now to carry her without any hint of a limp. At the altar, Ethan waited in his best suit, his dark eyes locked on hers, his expression full of love and awe. The ceremony itself was brief and meaningful. They exchanged simple gold bands that Ethan had purchased in town, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. The reception at the hotel dining room was exactly what Eleanor had wanted: good food, lively conversation, and dancing. Her father had hired a small band, and Ethan proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, spinning Eleanor around the floor with confidence and grace. "Where did you learn to dance like this?" Eleanor asked, laughing and slightly breathless. "I have hidden talents," Ethan said with a grin. "I figured I should learn at least one respectable skill to impress my wife." "I am already impressed," Eleanor said. "You carried me 15 miles through the desert. Everything after that is bonus." As the sun set and the party began to wind down, Ethan and Eleanor slipped away to the wagon waiting outside. They were spending their first night as a married couple at Ethan's ranch, in the cabin he had worked so hard to prepare for her. The ride through the darkness was peaceful, both of them content to sit close together in comfortable silence. When they arrived at the cabin, Ethan insisted on carrying Eleanor over the threshold despite her protests that her ankle was fine. "It is tradition," he said, "and I am not taking any chances with you." Inside, the cabin glowed with lamplight. Ethan had spent days making it perfect. Fresh curtains at the windows, a beautiful quilt on the bed, wildflowers in a vase on the table. It was simple but filled with love, and Eleanor felt tears spring to her eyes. "It is perfect," she whispered. "You are perfect," Ethan said, setting her gently on her feet. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I love you so much, Eleanor. I promise I will spend every day for the rest of my life trying to make you happy." "You already make me happy," Eleanor said. "You have from the very beginning." They spent their first night as husband and wife wrapped in each other's arms, talking and laughing and making plans for the future. It was the first night of their new life together, and everything felt full of promise. The months that followed were challenging but rewarding. Eleanor threw herself into helping Ethan build their ranch, using all the knowledge she had gained growing up on the AAA. They worked side by side from dawn to dusk, repairing fences, training horses, building infrastructure. It was hard work, but they did it together, supporting each other through the difficult days and celebrating the victories. Thomas was true to his word about helping neighbors. He lent them equipment, sent over extra hands when they needed help with big projects, and offered advice when asked. The Triple and the Morrison Ranch developed a partnership that benefited both properties. By the spring of 1884, the Morrison Ranch was beginning to thrive. They had a small herd of cattle, several horses that Eleanor was training for sale, and a garden that provided vegetables through the growing season. The cabin had been expanded with 2 additional rooms, giving them more space to live and work. One evening in May, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Eleanor reached over and took Ethan's hand. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice nervous and excited. Ethan looked at her with concern. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. Everything is right, actually." Eleanor smiled. "I am pregnant, Ethan. We are going to have a baby." The look of pure joy on Ethan's face was something Eleanor would remember for the rest of her life. He pulled her into his arms and held her tight, laughing and crying at the same time. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Eleanor asked, though the answer was obvious. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Ethan said. He pulled back to look at her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Are you all right? Are you feeling well?" "Do we need to get you to the doctor?" Eleanor laughed at his sudden worry. "I am fine. Better than fine. Dr. Brennan confirmed it yesterday. The baby should come in December, right around Christmas." "December," Ethan said wonderingly. He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "Our child." "Yours and mine." Thomas was overjoyed at the news of becoming a grandfather. He immediately began planning, insisting that they expand the cabin even more to make room for a nursery, offering to hire extra help so Eleanor would not have to work so hard as her pregnancy progressed. "I am pregnant, Father, not made of glass," Eleanor protested. "I can still work." "But you should not have to," Thomas said stubbornly. "Let Ethan and me handle the heavy work. You focus on growing my grandchild." In the end, Eleanor compromised. She continued with the lighter ranch work, but let Ethan take over the more physically demanding tasks. As her belly grew, she found herself tiring more easily anyway, grateful for the help even if she would never admit it out loud. The pregnancy was not always easy. There were mornings when nausea kept her in bed, days when her back ached so badly she could barely move, nights when she could not find a comfortable position to sleep. But through it all, Ethan was there, patient and supportive, bringing her whatever she needed, rubbing her back, holding her when she cried from exhaustion and hormones. "I love you," she told him one night, lying in bed with his hand on her stomach, feeling their baby kick. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Ethan said. "Both of you." Their son was born on December 18, 1884, in the middle of a rare Arizona snowstorm. Dr. Brennan made it to their ranch just in time, and after 12 hours of labor, Eleanor delivered a healthy baby boy with dark hair and his father's eyes. They named him Thomas Ethan Morrison, after both their fathers, and called him Tommy. He was perfect in every way, and holding him for the first time, Eleanor understood what her father had meant about love changing everything. Ethan cried when he held his son, this big, strong cowboy reduced to tears by the tiny human in his arms. "Thank you," he whispered to Eleanor. "Thank you for this, for him, for everything." Thomas was a doting grandfather, visiting nearly every day with gifts and advice and offers to babysit. Maria made endless baby clothes, and the local women who had initially been skeptical of Eleanor's independence now welcomed her into their circle with stories and support about motherhood. The first year of Tommy's life flew by in a blur of sleepless nights and joyful days. Eleanor and Ethan learned to parent together, supporting each other through the challenges and celebrating every milestone. Tommy's first smile, his first tooth, his first word, They witnessed it all with wonder and delight. The ranch continued to grow. They added more cattle, bred more horses, expanded their land through careful purchases of adjacent property. By Tommy's second birthday, they had become one of the most successful small ranches in the area, known for their quality horses and their fair business practices. In the spring of 1887, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant again. This time, armed with the experience of having done it once before, she was less anxious and more confident. Their daughter was born in October, a beautiful girl with Eleanor's light hair and Ethan's smile. They named her Sarah after Ethan's mother. 2 children kept them busy, but Eleanor had never been happier. She had everything she had ever wanted: a ranch of her own, horses to train, a husband who loved and respected her, and a growing family. The wild landscape that had nearly killed her that day in the desert had instead given her the greatest gift of her life. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Ethan surprised Eleanor with a trip back to the place where they had first met, the spot in the desert where she had fallen from her horse. They rode out together, leaving the children with Thomas and Maria, and stood looking at the sun-baked earth that had changed both their lives. "I think about that day sometimes," Ethan said, his arm around Eleanor's waist. "About how close I came to taking a different route, to missing you entirely. If I had left the last ranch even an hour later, or if I had decided to camp one more night before heading to Bisbee, we might never have met." "I think about it too," Eleanor admitted. "I was so scared that day, so certain I was going to die alone out here. And then you appeared like something out of a dream. You saved my life, Ethan. And you gave me a reason to live mine," Ethan said. He turned her to face him, his dark eyes serious. "Before I met you, I was just drifting, working for other people's dreams, never quite sure where I belonged. But you, Eleanor, you are my home. You always will be." Eleanor kissed him, there in the desert where their story had begun, grateful beyond words for the twist of fate that had brought them together. Over the years, the Morrison ranch continued to prosper. Tommy grew into a strong, curious boy who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. Sarah proved to have her mother's way with horses, able to calm even the most fractious animals with her gentle touch. In 1890, they had another child, a daughter they named Rose, completing their family. Thomas Ashford remained a constant presence in their lives, doting on his grandchildren and working alongside Ethan like they had been partners their whole lives. When Thomas passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1895, it was Ethan and Eleanor who took over management of the AAA, combining it with their own land to create one of the largest and most successful ranches in southeastern Arizona. Eleanor often thought about how much had changed since that day in the desert. The wild frontier of her youth was slowly being tamed, the Apache Wars were over, and Arizona Territory was on its way to statehood. Bisbee had grown from a rough mining town into a proper city, complete with schools and churches and even a hospital. But some things remained constant. The land was still harsh and beautiful, still demanded everything from those who chose to make their lives there. The work was still hard, still required determination and grit. And the love between Eleanor and Ethan was still as strong as it had been that first night when he had carried her 15 miles through the desert, refusing to give up even when the journey seemed impossible. On their 20th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their 3 children, their grandchildren, and friends from all over the territory, Eleanor stood beside Ethan and looked out at the life they had built together. The ranch sprawled in every direction, testimony to years of hard work and dedication. The house they had expanded over the years was filled with love and laughter. Their children were healthy and happy, raised to value hard work and honesty and kindness. No regrets. Ethan asked quietly, his hand finding hers. "Not a single one," Eleanor said, squeezing his fingers. "You? Only that I did not find you sooner," Ethan said with a smile. "But I suppose if I had, the story would not have been nearly as interesting." Eleanor laughed. "Breaking my ankle in the middle of the desert is certainly one way to meet your future husband. I prefer to think of it as fate making sure we did not miss each other," Ethan said. He pulled her close, this woman who had captured his heart 20 years ago and never let go. "I love you, Eleanor Morrison, today, tomorrow, and for the rest of my life." "I love you too," Eleanor said, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Always." As the sun set over the Arizona landscape, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold, Eleanor reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. From that terrifying day in the desert to this celebration of 20 years of marriage, every step had been worth it. The broken ankle that could have been her death had instead become the beginning of her greatest adventure. She had found love in the most unexpected way, with a cowboy who had refused to leave her behind, who had carried her to safety, and then had spent the rest of his life carrying her through every challenge and triumph. Together they had built not just a ranch, but a legacy, something that would outlast them both and carry on through their children and grandchildren. The Wild West was changing, becoming civilized, but the spirit that had drawn Eleanor's father and then Ethan to this land remained. It was a place where hard work mattered more than pedigree, where determination could overcome any obstacle, where two people could build something lasting from nothing but love and sweat and faith in each other. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Eleanor stood surrounded by everyone she loved, her hand in Ethan's, and knew that her life had turned out better than any dream she could have imagined. That broken ankle, that terrifying fall, that moment of pure luck when Ethan had ridden past, it had all led to this. To a life well lived, to love that had weathered every storm, to a family and a home and a partnership that would endure. The desert that had nearly claimed her life had instead given her everything worth living for. And standing there with Ethan beside her, their children laughing nearby, the ranch stretching out under the vast Arizona sky, Eleanor knew that she would not change a single moment of their journey together. Every challenge, every hardship, every joy and triumph had been part of the story that made them who they were. Years continued to pass, and the Morrison Ranch remained a cornerstone of the community. Eleanor and Ethan grew older together, their love deepening with each passing season. They celebrated as Arizona finally achieved statehood in 1912, proud to have been part of the territory's transformation from wild frontier to settled state. Their children grew and married and had families of their own. Tommy took over day-to-day management of the ranch, proving to be every bit as capable as his parents. Sarah married a veterinarian and opened a practice specializing in horses, putting her natural gift to professional use. Rose became a teacher, educating the children of the growing community, carrying on her grandmother's independent spirit in her own way. Through it all, Eleanor and Ethan remained partners in every sense of the word. They worked together, laughed together, faced every challenge as a team. Their love story became something of a legend in the area, the tale of the cowboy who carried an injured woman 15 miles through the desert and ended up finding his soulmate. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1933, the entire community gathered to celebrate. Eleanor was 73 now, her hair silver, her face lined with the marks of a life well lived. Ethan was 76, still tall and strong despite his years. They stood together in the yard of the ranch they had built, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and renewed their wedding vows. "I would do it all again," Ethan said, his voice still strong despite his age. "Every mile of that desert, every year of hard work, every moment of our life together. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Eleanor Morrison, and marrying you was the smartest thing I ever did." "The only smart thing, you mean," Eleanor teased, earning laughter from the assembled crowd. "But yes, I would do it all again too, even the broken ankle." "Especially the broken ankle," Ethan corrected. "Without it, I might have ridden right past the love of my life." They kissed to thunderous applause, and Eleanor felt the same thrill she had felt on their wedding day 50 years ago. Time had changed many things, but not this. Not the way her heart still skipped when Ethan smiled at her, not the security she felt in his arms, not the absolute certainty that they were meant to be together. As the celebration continued around them, Eleanor and Ethan slipped away for a moment of quiet. They walked slowly to the edge of the property, to a spot that overlooked the valley and the mountains beyond, the same mountains that had witnessed the beginning of their story. "Thank you," Eleanor said softly, "for everything, for finding me that day, for bringing me home, for building this life with me, for 50 years of love and partnership and adventure." "Thank you for saying yes," Ethan replied. "For taking a chance on a cowboy with nothing but dreams and determination. For being brave enough to love me, for giving me a family, for making every day an adventure." He took her hand, his grip still firm. "I would do it all again tomorrow if I could." "Another 50 years with you would not be enough." "Then it is a good thing we still have time," Eleanor said, squeezing his hand. "We are not done yet, Ethan Morrison. We have grandchildren to spoil and great-grandchildren to meet and a ranch to watch over. We have more sunsets to see and more memories to make." "Then let us get to it," Ethan said with the same determination that had carried her through the desert all those years ago. "Together, like always." And together they stood, watching the sun set over the land they loved, secure in the knowledge that their love story would continue to inspire long after they were gone. The broken ankle that had brought them together had led to a lifetime of happiness, to a legacy that would endure through generations, to proof that sometimes the most unexpected moments can lead to the greatest blessings. Their story became family legend, passed down through generations of Morrisons. Great-grandchildren would ask to hear about the day Grandpa Ethan saved Grandma Eleanor in the desert, and the tale would be told with love and reverence. It was a reminder that love can be found in the most unexpected places, that heroism sometimes means simply refusing to leave someone behind, that the hardest journeys can lead to the greatest rewards. Eleanor and Ethan lived to see the ranch they built thrive for decades, to hold great-great-grandchildren in their arms, to celebrate over 60 years of marriage. When Eleanor finally passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 85 in 1946, Ethan followed her just 6 months later, unable to imagine a life without his beloved wife. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, their headstones simple but meaningful, together always. And on that same hill, their descendants placed a small marker at the spot where Ethan had first brought Eleanor home all those years ago, a memorial to the moment that had changed everything. The Morrison Ranch continued under the care of their descendants, and every generation heard the story of how it all began. They learned about Eleanor's strength and independence, about Ethan's kindness and determination, about the power of love to transform lives. The tale of the broken ankle and the cowboy who refused to give up became more than just family history. It became a testament to the enduring power of love, to the importance of helping those in need, to the beauty that can come from the most unexpected circumstances. And sometimes, when the desert wind blew across the Arizona landscape, when the sunset painted the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, when the stars came out in their thousands over the ranch house, the descendants of Eleanor and Ethan would stand together and remember. They would remember the love story that started with a fall and a rescue, and 15 miles of determination. They would remember that the best things in life often come when we least expect them, that love can be found in the most unlikely moments, and that sometimes being in the right place at the right time is not luck at all but destiny. The legacy of Eleanor and Ethan Morrison lived on not just in the land they had built and the family they had raised, but in the example they had set. Their love story proved that partnership, respect, and determination could overcome any obstacle. It showed that true love does not need grand gestures or perfect circumstances, just two people willing to work together through whatever life brings. And it demonstrated that sometimes the worst moments of our lives, the falls and the breaks and the times when we think all is lost, can actually be the beginning of something beautiful beyond imagining. Their story ended as all great love stories do, not with death, but with the assurance that what they built together would endure. The ranch continued to thrive, the family continued to grow, and the love that had started on a desert floor with a broken ankle and a determined cowboy continued to ripple outward through generations, touching lives and inspiring hearts with the simple truth that love, real love, lasts forever.